Welcome to our paper presentation session in International Conference on Commerce, Management and Social Sciences Research, organized by Management Institute, the Warsaw University of Life Science, Poland, Institute for Service Management, Germany, College of Social Sciences and Humanities, Bulehora University, Ethiopia, and Research Culture Society. Our main objective is to observe the current scenario towards the advancement of common citizen life by improving the theory and practice of various disciplines of business, management, and economy. The aim of the conference is to provide an interaction stage for researchers, practitioners from academia and industries to deal with the state of the art advancement in their respective fields. So let's start the paper presentation session. I would like to tell the resource person, chairperson's name of the paper presentation. First is Dr. Piotr, who is adjunct professor at Management Institute of Warsaw University of Life Science. Next is Professor Dr. Rashmi Gujrati, Professor and Dean, Technia Institutes of Advanced Studies, New Delhi, India. Professor B.K. Suryaprakash Rao, Professor at College of Social Science and Humanities at Bulehora University, Ethiopia. Dr. Konrad, Adjunct Professor, Management Institute at Warsaw University, Poland. So these are our session chairpersons. Now I would like to invite our first paper presenter, who is Manjot, whose title is Turnover Intention of Professionals and its Determinants Factors. So I would like to invite Ms. Manjot.
To all. My name is Manjot and I'm a research scholar at Punjabi University, Patiala. The topic for my presentation is turnover intention of professionals and its determinant factors. The main objective of my paper is to review the concept of turnover intention and study various factors affecting the turnover of employees. Turnover is basically defined as the quitting of job by employees in an organization. And turnover intention is the desire of employees to leave an organization. Turnover and turnover intention are different terms, as the former is about employees quitting their job or leaving the organization, whereas the latter is about where an employee wishes to leave the organization but might or might not quit. Various researchers state that low pay structure, low potential for growth, unfair treatment by superiors, conflict with peers are different reasons which cause the employees to quit. These factors cause turnover intention and can eventually lead to the turnover of employees. Turnover proves to be very costly, as a lot of money and resources are spent in recruiting, selecting, and training process. Even the I'm sorry, my screen is not moving. I'm really sorry. Patients a lot of money on recruiting, selecting, and training process. So even the motivation of the existing staff is affected to a great extent when the already present employees leave the organizations. Although turnover has its negative impacts, but a positive turnover is required for new ideas and innovations. These are the various factors that affect the turnover of employees in an organization. First one is the leadership style. This style is the way or manner in which a manager or supervisor chooses to act towards his subordinates, and the leadership function is carried out by them. Researchers state that employees working under autocratic leaders quit more often as compared to the people working under democratic leaders. Employees are happier when they are given the chance to make decisions on their own. The second factor is demographic variables. Although the major demographic factors like age, marital status, wage, or position do not directly affect this turnover, but in some cases, like gender plays an important role. According to some researches, females show a higher turnover as compared to men. Like, for example, married employees are more committed to stay in an organization for a longer time as compared to the single ones. The next point is organizational justice. Wherever we are, justice plays an important role, be it an organization or our personal life. So, organization justice is characterized by different individuals' perception of fairness of behavior. An organization needs to be fair in its system and procedures to ensure that employees are satisfied, committed, and loyal. The next factor is organizational climate. Discouraging organizational climate negatively affects job satisfaction, which in turn leads to turnover intention. To add to this, there are various structural constraints, personal proclivities, and state of affairs which cause turnover intention. There are various steps which can be used to eliminate or decrease turnover intention, because we cannot say that an organization can totally eliminate turnover intention. And turnover intention or turnover of employees to some extent is good because it helps to bring new ideas, new people in the organization. So I would like to conclude by saying that in the rapid globalization era, turnover has emerged as a major challenge for all the organizations. So companies should try to find various ways where they can retain their employees and help them stay in the organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Jyoti. And you have presented related with the employment. And what you will say that in the pandemic situation, what the company has did with their employees. Are you satisfied by the role of the employer in this pandemic situation?
We cannot say that we are totally satisfied with what the organizations have done, although many organizations have tried to cope up with the situation, but it was all of a sudden and nobody was prepared for this. So many people were retrenched from their jobs. Uh, Now organizations are trying to cope up with it. They are prepared so that they can give salaries, pays to their employees.
A lot of time we have seen that when we are discussing related with the organization behavior, even when we teach our students also, that in the management there is a principles of the management, which 5 functions we say, and same in the organization behavior. We explain them that there should be a good HR policies and all the work should be done in the well mannered, and there could be a good relationship between the employers and employees. So you are in the working. So I want to ask one thing, that what you feel practically, do you think that the organization are thinking about their employees?
Not all the organizations, but with changing times, the employers are trying to maintain cordial relations with their employees. It's not that they can be friendly all the time with their employees, but still they are trying that they can understand their situations and help them deal with the problems they are facing. Now, like we commonly see that organizations have started crutches and they try to help female employees to bring their kids with them so that they can work properly, or they do not stress about the work and their children, so that they can maintain a balance between job and their home. So organizations are slowly and gradually trying to cope up with the situation so that they can maintain a balance.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you to all.
Mr. Jitendra Kumar Dubey and Dr. Sanjeev Gupta. Their title is A Study on the Effect of GST and Demonetization on the Growth of the MSME.
Very good afternoon to all present. Am I audible to all?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so very good afternoon to all. So my topic is that the study on the effect of the GST and demonetization on the growth of the MSME. So, if I'd like to give some introduction of these two economic reforms which were happened in India which was started from the 2016. So when in 2016, the firstly the demonetization was announced by the our present Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi. So in that they decided to demonetize the two currency which were the 500 and 1000 currency was demonetized. Thereafter, within 1 year, so they announced one more economic reforms. That was the introduction of the new taxation system. So that was the GST, that is the goods and service tax, which was implemented in the 1st July 2017. So that was also a very one of the kind of revolution which happened in Indian taxation system. So it is a very complex and indirect tax structure which was implemented in the four different slabs throughout the economy. So we had different kinds of when we talk about the implementation of the demonetization, this was also one of the very much challenging task for the government. So because more than 86% of the currency was demonetized, which was being totally floated into the Indian economic system. So when they announced this kind of task or this kind of act into the Indian economy, because the India is a country where most of the there is a second largest populated country in the world. So they are having a too number of too many customers and the consumers are there, and the people population is living in the rural area also. Though it means though they were having a different various kinds of challenges because the population is not having a too much of education. So they are not aware about the online and the digital payment system. So there were different kinds of challenges were there. So it government had to take a lots of amendments in the span of the only on almost about in the 2 months. They made almost 126 amendments in the introduction of the or the in the implementation of the demonetization system. So this was just with respect to the implementation of the demonetization. Now, if I'll talk about GST, that is the GST is a far-reaching back-handed tax that would supplant the existing duties. For example, they extract the obligations, administration tax, and the VAT. So these are the some kind of taxes system which were already there in country. So which was removed by which was already changed with the introduction of this kind of taxation system. That was the GST. So government reported to execute the GST from 1st July 2017. So it was also some of the kind of challenges were faced by the government because of the lack of the infrastructure, lack of the awareness about the GST system, because it was something new for the everyone who was uh, going to use this kind of system. Although this taxation system was having a certain kind of easy in the implementation. So if we just see this diagram so that we can understand that how this kind of taxation system works. So it starts from the means you have to there is a system that the taxes is being charged from the manufacturer to the consumer. Then ultimately that complete taxation tax has to be paid by the consumer. So now I'll talk to about that what kind of objectives I'm having in my study. So I just wanted to find out the impact of the demonetization on the growth of the MSME. Then I just and two more objectives are there that I want to know that what kind of profitability change in the profitability and the operational performance of the MSME, and then what is the change growth of the MSME, what is the impact on the growth of the MSME. Now, what kind of problems which were faced in the implementation of the GST? So there is a problem was the in assigning the commodities rate slab. So this was also one of the kind of problem because in the GST when they were coming up with the same kind of taxation system for all over the country. So there were the different kind of commodities, and which some commodities were essential in other state, and that kind of commodity was in the luxury item in some other state. For example, if you can take, the biscuits are an essential commodity in the Kerala, and but if you come with the if you go to the Bihar state, then that kind of items are considered as a luxury item. So the find out the rate of the taxation system, the fixing out the rates of the slab was very much difficult. So the biggest challenge of the GST implementation is bringing all the index tax under the same roof. Second, thereafter, the determining GST rates was major step ensuring the success of the GST, which should conducive to the government and public also. GST has to develop GST portal. So that was also one of the uh, challenging tasks for the government, that they had to develop certain kind of portal, and because all the kind of port when taxation being levied through the state government, the different state governments. So there was a different kind of portal. When the GST was implemented, then one portal was to be created for entire country. So the load was going to be too much on the that kind of portal, and so that the technology which was to be required for the, in that case, that was had to be a very highly in the high technology was to be used. So if you talk about the significance of this study, so this in through this study I'll be trying to cover at that what kind of impact will be there on the economy, Indian economy, as well as in the Asian economy. Because if you talk about the, if there is a change in the Indian economy, and the Indian economy is totally dependent on the MSME sector. So the lots of MSME units are being run in India. So that's why the, if there is a change, there is a impact on the working of the MSME in country, then it will also make an impact on the entire economy of the country. Now I'll come to the impact of the GST on MS. So what was the kind of impact it made to the MSME units? So of all the consistency system under GST, registration, payment, refund, and returns will presently be brought out through this online entrance. So just in this matter, the a small manufacturing enterprise need not to stress over the cooperating with the with the different divisional officials for doing these compliances. So if you see that when these things has come under the same kind of taxation system, that is the GST, so it has been very much easy for the small manufacturing enterprise. So they don't need to go for somewhere in some offices, and they don't need to visit to certain offices, so that they can just file out these kind of every types of compliance system which has to be required in the taxation system. So it has become very much easy for that the small manufacturing enterprise. It has also made help that it has made it easy that the starting to business in India. If you if anyone wants to start a business, then earlier it was to be done that they had to take a VAT registration. So it was very different in every state. So there was, as we know that there are different kinds of different states in India. So it means that if you want to run your business in some state, then if you're moving out of the state, then you have to go for the registration in the next different state also. But through the introduction of the GST, so now it has become very much easy that the organizations, if they are starting their business, then if they are making register them with the GST, then they'll don't need to go for registration for the different. So it has become a centralized process. So the organizations are finding very much easier. But we can say that there has been certain kind of impact in the initial time. So through which the business of the different business units was affected. So now when the organizations are working in a systematic manner, the organization or small manufacturing organizations are, if they are on a systematic manner, then this is helping them, and it is making the business very much easier. Now I'll come to the next part of my research, that was the impact of demonetization on MSME. So it also made certain kind of impact for a certain duration when the demonetization was implemented, because suddenly it was decided that the some of the currencies, or more than 86% of the currencies of the country will be demonetized. So it made a huge impact as the small manufacturing enterprise customers are almost the low income group peoples, and the people who are working in those units, so they were having a lack of cash, a lack of the money. So accordingly the demand of the units went down, so the business was impacted through that. So impact was on the receivables from the customers, because if the customer because the customers were not having a sufficient amount of money with them, so that's why they were not able to make a payment at the right time. So it made a huge impact on the MSME units. So because they were not able to make a payment to their suppliers, because they were not receiving the payment from the customers also, so it impacted all the way. It impacted to the employment also. The people were losing their jobs. Impact was on the operations also, because the demand was going down. So due to that, the customer was not there, so it stopped the production also. So again, if we can see that the impact of demonetization was used in the system, and MSME units were totally almost or we can say that 100% MSME units were affected with this kind of act which was made by the government. Now I'll come to the last conclusion. So if we talk about the demonetization, so it resulted in the cash crunch and the liquidity crisis among the common people. So again, the informal sector. So ultimately, it made a huge impact on the revenues of the MSME. So the growth of the MSME went down, and many of the MSME could not revive themselves from the impact of the demonetization. So we can say that some of the units were impacted for a certain duration, but some of the units were not able to revive themselves after the impact of the demonetization also. It means that they were not able to make a comeback into the business. So it made a huge loss to the MSME units, some of the MSME units. GST, if we talk about the GST is expected to build a taxpayer base significantly MSME into the extension, and will put weight of the consistency and the related expenses to them. GST has made it easier for them to run business and other states of the country, as there is a uniformity of the tax system. So we can say that in the initial time, it made an impact on the working of the MSME units, and it made an impact on the operations of the units. But on the later part, they have the impact of the GST was we can say that it was neutralized, and it has made business very much easier for the MSME units now. So because the business to run the business has become a very easy part after the introduction of this system. So that's all from my side. Thank you so much.
Mr. Jitendra, your topic is related with the demonetization, and with that you have added GST also.
Yes.
Don't you think that both are different? Demonetization is the different matter and GST is a different matter. Whatever
Yes,
you
yes.
have explained in the GST, that is related with the businessman, those who have to pay their tax. So what are the policies has been declared by the government, and what is the new trend through digitalization? You can fill your GST in the time period, and the time period has been given that in this period you have to pay the tax through this, right?
Yes.
And in the demonetization, if we say that demonetization is related with the with the currency, so what you say that both are relevant to each other, and how demonetization has been impacted on Indian society?
Yes, ma'am. If we talk about these were the two economic reforms which were introduced by the government, and we can say that I think there was certain kind of linkage was there, and in the minds of the government, it was that firstly they'll come up with the demonetization policy, then they'll start to introduce because they were having a planning of that introduction of the GST is also there in the pipeline. So firstly, they wanted to just clean out the black money. This kind of intentions were there in the mind of the government. It may be they were not able to achieve their objectives. So again, the intentions were there in the mind of the government was just they wanted to clean out the black money and the corruption kind of things which were due to the some kind of that's why the demonetization was introduced. Thereafter, they had planning that they will be coming up with the introduction of the GST. So they'll be trying to clear out the they'll be trying to framing a new economic environment in India. So the business, and it will be helpful to the people who will be looking to work on the business, and they'll be starting to their business. So it will be helpful for the people who just want to start their business, who are not having a so much of money. So they are not having a black money, they are having a their hard earned money. So they'll be having a effective they'll be having some kind of benefits for this. So I think these two are some having a some kind of relations. That's why I have taken, because these two economic reforms were introduced by the government in a 1 year of
No,
span,
but
and
no, but
the impact is there on the MSME, or and the impact is on not only of the demonetization, not only of the GST. It has been there is a combined impact on the MSME, on these MSME. That's why I have taken this topic.
yeah, but please focus on this topic because both are different, so you cannot merge it together. GST MSME is a different case and demonetization is different case.
Okay.
And to doing the demonetization behind of this was not motive to give a new policy in the GST. That was a different case. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Jitendra Dubey, very good, excellent presentation. Do you think demonetization is success? I think somebody said 99% of money was recovered by government of India. But do you think this is a successful story?
So
Do you
I
think it's a
think
successful story?
no, sir, no, not at all. It is not a completely successful story, but I think it was having a certain kind of objective that the money will not be received because of the black monies there in the hands of some of the people.
No.
But it was the intention of the government, maybe, but it has not been successful from that point of view. But it has created a certain other.
My dear friend,
Yes, sir.
my dear friend,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
this is 100% failure.
Yes, I
Either
agree
you
with
agree
you.
or
I agree with you,
yes,
sir.
yes, madam, yes, madam.
I agree
We
with you.
can't.
Yes, sir.
99.5% recovered means what is the thing? Do you think in India no black money is available?
Yes, sir.
This is not
100% it is
possible. Not
available.
possible.
100% failure. I think
Yes, sir.
many articles are came. It is 100% failure. One more thing, GST. What happened? Due to GST, many of MSMEs were closed. Many of
Yes, sir.
MSMEs
I have
closed
mentioned this thing
just
that.
because of demonetization.
Yes, sir. I have mentioned
Yes,
this
please,
thing in
please,
my.
please. Yes, sir. That is why what happened over here, demonetization is not a successful story in India because of they are not having proper plan for implementing that is demonetization.
Yes.
And
There
again,
was
within
not
8
a
months,
proper,
GST came
yes.
into yes, again GST came into picture within 8 months time. But both these things are severely affected MSMEs abnormally. In
Yes, sir.
India, very bad situation was created. Are you agree or not, Mr. Dubey?
Yes, sir. But sir, if we talk about the GST, then I agree that after the demonetization, lot many MSME units have been shut down, and they are not able to start up there again. I know that this is the
Yes.
fact, but the
Yes.
GST is that
Okay.
GST is not making an effect on the MSME. It is making it easier for the business, and it is a very good for this people who are starting their business. It has become a very easy to start up, and they have to make a registration very easily. And because of the earlier system, it was something difficult. So I agree with your point that the demonetization has been 100% failure. But the GST is making certain kind of positive impact on that.
19 with respect to developing countries.
Am I audible, all of you? Hello,
Yes,
am I audible?
yes, Saida, you can start.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, good afternoon to the session chairpersons, the delegates, the moderators, and everyone present. Today, I'm going to make my presentation on the topic Socioeconomic impact of COVID-19 with respect to developing countries. More than 50, with a total of more than 50 million cases and 8 lakh confirmed deaths worldwide, necessitated lockdown in 2021 in several countries in various forms. Numerous restrictions were also imposed to manage COVID-19. However, the economic fallout of the pandemic has not been equally felt and will likely be experienced for many years to come. As per the official data released by Ministry of Statistics, Indian economy, which is an example of a developing country, contracted by 7.3% in April-June quarter of this fiscal year. This is the worst decline observed since the ministry started compiling data in 1996. The lockdown had a devastating impact on slowing down the economy worldwide also. As per the surveys conducted, there was a steep rise in unemployment rate, which increased to 12% by April-June quarter of 2021 in India. Millions of jobs have been lost permanently and have dampened consumption. The GDP growth crashed by 23.9%. All the sectors, primary, secondary, and tertiary, were equally impacted due to COVID-19. In agriculture, decrease in demand from hotels and restaurants has seen prices of agricultural commodities drop by 20%. Further, social distancing, restrictions on travel, etc., decreased the inspectors, availability of inspectors, and delivery staff, particularly affecting perishable goods such as meat and vegetables. Petroleum and oil industry was also affected. The oil price war was predicted to have grave implications on global economy. Normally, cheap oil would have functioned as an advantage for economies. Nevertheless, savings on petrol are unlikely to be redirected into more spending. The manufacturing industry, importation issues and staffing deficiencies were key concerns for businesses due to disruption of supply chains and self-isolation policies. Education at all levels was affected. UNESCO estimated close to 900 million learners affected due to closure of educational institutions. Lack of free school meals affected nutrition. The dropout rates increased. Additionally, families could not go to work as a direct result of e-learning, affecting their income. The postgraduate community, the research community was also affected due to cancellation of conferences and seminars. The financial markets and global economy was also affected due to uncoordinated government responses, lockdowns, leading to disruption in supply and demand chain. In the healthcare industry, it was facing unprecedented challenge worldwide. There was increased risk to healthcare workers. There was increased healthcare costs, shortages of protective equipment, face masks, low medical capacity, ICU beds, ventilators, ultimately exposed weaknesses in the delivery of patient care. In pharmaceutical industry, profound changes to the dynamics of healthcare led to massive investment in disease prevention infrastructure, accelerating digital transformation of healthcare delivery. Further, production slowdowns, limitations in supply, it led to revenue loss. The hospitality, tourism, and aviation industry was also impacted. 50 million jobs were at risk in the tourism sector. The aviation industry was coping with an unprecedented wave of cancellations and significant drop in demand due to social distancing and restrictions on travel. In research and development, the companies and academic institutions were racing to develop an effective vaccine, leading to many coalitions, national and international. The real estate sector was also affected. Social distancing reduced house views, making redundant many workers, inevitably affecting individuals' ability to pay rents, mortgages, and various household expenditures. COVID-19 also impacted socially, affecting family dynamics. There was increase in domestic violence and home video gaming also increased. It has a devastating effect on millions of people, their livelihood, and their income generating activities. The rural communities, particularly the disadvantaged groups, including women and girls, were severely affected. It also led to increase in mental health concern, particularly those who were infected, those who had to isolate, quarantine, those who lost their family and friends, healthcare workers, frontline workers, and doctors. However, the extent of the mental health crisis is not limited to people directly impacted by the disease. The current pandemic widened the pre-existing inequalities. Lockdown weakened the daily wage laborers, informal workers, migrant laborers, small and medium farmers, further marginalizing already vulnerable people. Financial stress, constant exposure to violence, food insecurity, and inadequate access to social safety nets increase poor mental health and poverty. Women had increased stress and anxiety levels. Children have been hidden victims. Children around the world had their lives toppled. They missed out on life saving vaccines. They had to adapt to e learning and confinement. There was increase in philanthropy work with billions of dollars being donated. There was preference shown for local donations. Women, particularly in rural areas, were affected. They had to cope with additional social pressure with all family members being at home. There was increase in household work and which increased the depressive symptoms. There was increase in unemployment rate. In India, the unemployment rate in January 2020 was 7.2%, which shot up to 23.5% in April 2020. A higher percentage of women experience job losses, unpaid labor, and care work for women increased. There was further marginalization of people affected with leprosy, HIV, disability, transgender people, sex workers, with large sections of the society focusing on ensuring oxygen supply, medical support, food support. These communities missed out a lot. So the conclusion is there is a need for there is a need for a broad socioeconomic development plan with sustainable business models where government and financial institutions should constantly reassess and reevaluate and deliver whatever it takes, focusing and prioritizing mental health care, raising awareness through self-help group. Blended finance can support recovery. Blended finance can improve the quality of spending in healthcare and education. Blended finance is the use of catalytic capital from public and philanthropic sources to increase private sector investment. This decreases the risk and increases rate of return on investment. Besides this, the government should be ready to spend billions of dollars to fight the health crisis and fast track the economic survey due to COVID-19 instigated recession. These are my references for this work. Thank you very much.
This pandemic situation.
Sir, we have to first focus on the mental health of all the people impacted directly or indirectly due to COVID-19. So counseling can help if we can form groups where we can share our experiences, where we can suggest how to divert and utilize the energy of children, how women at home can cope with the increased pressure, with the increased work. So we can form groups, we can form self-help groups, we can increase the counseling, and we can run certain programs where we can uh, show the women how to manage and cope with the loss of their loved ones and how to cope with the increased pressure. Besides the economic impact of COVID-19, the social impact.
Okay, madam, one more thing. Some of the countries are providing COVID-19 finance support, like Ireland. All unemployed youth provided the stipend for every month, around 350, that is euros they are giving. But why can't India is not able to provide that type of financial facility for unemployed youth?
Sir,
But
India, yeah, yes, sir.
Indian corporates are there. Why don't the government? You have an idea by all corporate houses. Why don't you that is prioritize this money for providing this that is that is unemployed workers, employees, unemployees, and both unemployed youth. They are providing this financial facility. They are able to survive. Well, small countries, Ireland is providing, but why can't India? Why don't you
India,
suggest to the government?
sir, the government is being
Please.
suggested by many agencies, both government and private, but we have a lot of politics in India and vested interests. And India is a very big country, sir. So we have to manage billions of people. It is easy to manage a small country. So taking into consideration all these strata, all these sections, the government is trying, sir. I have seen certain programs where uh, people who have lost their relatives due to COVID-19, they are being given jobs, they are being given some support, but it is very difficult to manage such a huge population. The government is
Okay.
trying, the
One
government
more
is
thing,
trying,
madam.
sir.
One
Yes,
last
sir.
question. Last question,
Yes,
madam.
sir.
Last 1 year, government of India raised the petroleum prices more than 60 to 70%. Earlier it is before pandemic 65 rupees per liter petrol. Now it is 110 rupees. Is
Yes,
it
sir.
fair on the part of the government?
Yes, sir, I think so.
Is it fair on the part of the government to collect more money from the public?
Yes, sir. We didn't benefit from the oil crashes. India didn't benefit, sir. So partly it is failure of the government. We should have benefited.
Yes. One more thing, that is
One,
international prices are very low, but
one,
India the prices are very high. Yes,
one
how
question.
can we justify?
One question from my side also, Professor, that
Please,
it's
madam.
it's it's true that we can say that in this situation when in the pandemic, other countries are giving some benefits to their people, those who are in the country. Even I
Yes.
have listened in the USA and in the Australia, there are some students are those who are studying. They are also getting benefit from the government, but
Yes.
our government has not seen from this side. And in this pandemic situation, see, in the education department also there was lot of problem. We people
Yes.
were work from home, and we are giving full education to our students. We are trying to give a best that our students cannot lack their study. But what the organization has did the private organization has deducted immediately on the 50%. Why government is not looking from this side? Why government only look for the that people, those who are in the government servant? They think that they want the increase in the DA, they want the increment in the HRA, but
Yes.
we private organization people are paying tax properly according to them, but no benefit. So this side I will say that we are also lacking lot of things, and our government is not focusing us. So we have to also raise for these points. We are bringing our research papers, but we have to bring these kinds of papers, so at least some word should reach to the government, and they should think that what the private organization is doing. Oh, not only for the management, even management is getting full fees from the students, but what the faculties are getting, this is a very big problem everywhere, and I have seen lot of organization has deducted 50%.
Yes,
And
exactly.
yet the organizations are going to be open, and now management is not willing to pay full salary, because now they are thinking, now how I will give full salary. So these all things are a very issues in our country, and even government support is not here. And government earlier, when in 2020 March 20, when there was an announcement of the lockdown, after 4 months there was one declaration came that government is not responsible if any company is giving you half salary, or if any company is removing you from the company. By this declaration, by this notice of the Supreme Court, now what was happened, corruption has been started. Earlier Dr. Jitendra has focused on the demonetization. Then also demonetization, behind of this they want to bring out the black money, but black money was not came out. It means not that in India there is no black money. In India all people are involved in the corruption, and in this pandemic situation most of the people are involved in the corruption, only due to some policies which has not been focused by our government. So we have
Exactly,
to study
madam.
this. Yes, Dr. Shilpa, you are audible. Please carry on.
Topic of my research is reducing poverty and natural resource degradation through human capital accumulation. So according to the Brundtland Commission, poverty is a major cause of environmental degradation And environmental degradation in turn induces the poverty. Approximately 70% of the 1.2 billion individuals living below the poverty line depends on the local natural resources for earning their livelihoods. Many of the least of the country individuals are caught in the vicious downward spiral of poverty and environmental degradation, where poverty pushes the environmental degradation, and the degradation of environmental resources on which individuals are dependent for their livelihood induces the poverty. So once the question arises, if poor people are dependent on natural resources for earning for their livelihood, then why do they overexploit the natural resources? The reason behind is that they have little access to human capital, financial capital, or any other employment opportunity in which they can, in other employment or land in response to limited availability of local livelihood earning opportunities, they degrade the natural resources. So forest resource exploitation, fishing, overgrazing, agriculture intensification are some of the livelihood earning activities of poor people. So this prevalence of poverty increases the dependence of growing population on scarce natural resources for their survival. Poor people lack resources to invest in sustainable use of resources or land management practices. So this creates a cycle where increase in poverty leads to deterioration of the resources, and the deterioration of the resources on which individual is dependent for their income induces the poverty. So this is called a poverty environment trap. So my main objective over here is to look at the role of human capital in reducing the poverty and natural resource degradation. How the investment in resources will reduce poverty and natural resource degradation. So for this purpose, I have used a theoretical model, an overlapping generation model where individual lives for two periods. That is T period when he is called young, and period T+1 when he becomes old and exits the system. So when the individual gets utility by consumption when he is young in period T, consumption when he is old, that is CT+1, and by investment in human capital or by investing in the child's education, that is represented by the VT+1. So when the individual is young, he receives certain education from his parents, investment in education, that is VT, combined with the time available to individual, that is L, in turn combined with the productivity parameter associated with the human capital accumulation. This will lead to the accumulation of human capital, that is HT+1, which will be available to individual in next period. So in first period, individual does not do any kind of activity. He just educate himself with the help of the investment in the investment of the parent in child education. Coming to the budget constraint of the individual receives certain transfer from their parents, that is given by the epsilon and yt, which he in turn spends on the consumption when he is young, that is ct, and he purchases certain natural resource stock, nt, from the adult generation of the period t, and he pays some price pt for that. In the second period, individual earns some income, that is YT+1, plus he sells some natural resources that he has purchased in period T to the firms for production. Combining these two sources of income, he will consume out of it. He will make some investment for his child education. Thus, he will transfer certain amount, that is epsilon YT+1, to future generation. So total income of the individual earned by the individual period T plus 1 depends on the human capital that will be available to him only if investment in education is made by the parents. So he will earn WHT plus 1 wage rate for this plus some he is endowed with some unskilled labor also. He will devote a part of it, fraction of it, working in the natural resource intensive technology production, that is 1 minus ST plus fraction of L, plus he will devote some of the unskilled labor in the human capital intensive production also. So there are two kind of technology available for the production. One is the human capital intensive technology, which is given by the, for which output production is given by the function YT plus 1 is equal to H, which in turn depends on the human capital accumulation that is made by the individual unskilled labor. And there is other technology that is natural resource intensive technology, for which output is given by the YT plus 1 R, which in turn depends on the unskilled labor devoted by the individual for its production and some extraction of natural resources, which in turn involves some price for extraction of resources, that is PT plus 1. So our natural resource dynamic is given by the equation 8, that is NT plus 1, that is the natural stock in period T plus 1 depends on the natural stock in previous period, that is NT minus some extraction of resources, that is XT plus 1. So there is some natural regeneration capacity of resources given by the delta. Coming to the firm optimization in the two production sector. So after the firm optimizes chooses the unskilled labor to employ and the human capital to hire, we get the equation ST plus 1 L, that is the amount of human capital needed for the production in the human capital intensive technology. So it depends on the human capital HT plus 1. So if there is the unskilled labor devoted to the production in the human capital intensive sector, it depends positively on the share of unskilled labor in the aggregate output, that is 1 minus theta. Also, it depends on the investment in human capital indirectly on investment in the human capital made by their parents, that is VT. So we get the proposition for after solving the model, we get that in this model, the income earned by the adult in the next period increases as the VT increases, as the investment in human capital is positive. You can see from equation 10 that YT plus 1 is given by PR AR XT plus 1 L, which depends on the extraction of resources. YT plus 1 is the income earned by the adult generation. So it is less when the investment in human capital is less, when VT is 0. When VT is some positive amount, then the income of the individual increases and he earns some income from by working in the human capital intensive output production sector. So this is some in positive investment is required in human capital for diversification of the output, so that some amount of labor is devoted to the human capital intensive output production. Otherwise, the output will be 0 and economy will be producing by using the natural resources only. This will lead to the overexploitation of the resources. So we have also solved for the stationary equilibrium. So stationary equilibrium level of human capital accumulation, which is given by the H bar, which is dependent on the weight put by the parent, that is 1 by beta, on the child's education. If higher is the weight put by the parent on the child education, then higher will be the human capital in the long run. Similarly, the income of the individual given by the YVAR, that is positively dependent on the weight put by the parent on the child's education and the investment in human capital. So in the long run, the human capital and the income of the individual is positively impacted by the investment in education and the weight put by the parent on child education. Similarly, in the long run, the natural resource stock, which is given by the NVAR, that will be higher. Higher is the weight given by the adult agent to investment in child education. That is the 1 by beta. So we can see that this natural resource stock depends on the 1 minus beta, given other parameter. Also, we have solved for the sustainable growth in consumption. So this sustainable growth in consumption, which is given by equation 16, it again depends on the weight put by the parent for investment in education. So here in the long run, all our parameters like consumption, income, human capital, it all depends on the weight put by the individual to investment in education. So these are some of the main findings of our theoretical model. As the investment in child's education by the parents increases, the total earned income of the individual increases. A more educated individual is less dependent on the natural resources for earning her or his income. The diversification of the income earning sources of the individual from complete reliance on the natural resource intensive sector to partial reliance requires a certain positive amount of investment in the education of the young agent by the parent. A long-run steady-state equilibrium level of the human capital accumulation is higher. Higher is the weight put by the parent on the child's education. The steady-state value of income earned by individual depends on the investment in education made by his or her parent. The steady-state value of natural resource stock is higher when the individual assigns certain importance to education investment relative to consumption. Sustainable growth in consumption requires that individual must assign certain weight or give some importance to human capital accumulation. Thank you.
I'm Dr. J. Chitralekha, Assistant Professor, Varaka Das, Govardhan Das, Vaishnav College, Chennai. Today, my topic is governance and corporate social responsibility with specific reference to top MNC companies in Chennai. So now let's see what is meant by this governance means. It is set of rules, processes, and practices by which the companies are directed and controlled. It also identifies what is the role, what are the powers, and who are accountable and who makes the decision. Okay, example we can give here is internal audit system within a company. Okay, then the next is we can see what is meant by corporate social responsibility. It is basically a management concept which is mainly concerned with the social and environmental concerns in business operation and interaction with stakeholders. Example we can tell here, Google has invested 1.5 billion in renewable energy, and Disney has invested 100 million in children's hospital. So this is what is corporate social responsibility means, and my topic is specific reference to multinational company. So what is this multinational company? Is that a company from its home country, it just carries out business in various countries, that is throughout the world, that is called as multinational companies. And for my studies purpose, I've just chosen only top 10 companies, MNC companies in Chennai, that is Bridgestone India Private Limited, Cognizant Technology Solution,
HTC Global Services, Himanshu India Private Limited, Panasonic, Randstad, Rocco Bathroom, Saint Gobain, Sodaxo, and Zoho Corporation. My studies' main objective are to find the extent of CSR practices in these top MNC companies, and also to examine what are the main elements of CSR practices among these top MNC companies, and also to find out what are the uniqueness among these top MNC companies. The research methodology is that I have just examined the annual reports of all these MNC companies in order to cover the objectives that I have framed. I would like to conclude by saying that among all these 10 MNC companies, Sodaxo Technical Services India Private Limited is doing its best, excellent job in order to cope up with their social, that is corporate social responsibility practices. And next comes is the Himanshu India Private Limited, also is doing a wonderful job in keeping up their corporate governance as well as the CSR practices. And next comes all other companies. And I would like to say that almost all the 10 companies are practicing CSR and corporate governance. But the thing is that to what extent they practice. From that point of view, each company differs from one company to another company. Thank you.
I am Immaculate, and I'm presenting on a gendered analysis of the impact of COVID-19 on artisanal and small-scale gold mining communities in Zimbabwe, and I'm using a case of Bindura district. By way of introduction, I would like to define artisanal mining for the sake of the international audience as the kind of or small-scale mining that is usually characterized by the use of lesser technology and expertise, and is usually characterized as informal. The main objective of this paper is to look at how men and women who are involved in artisanal mining in Zimbabwe have structured their livelihoods in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. Just by way of background, to show the magnitude of the number of people who are involved in artisanal mining in Zimbabwe, which is right now a largely informal economy. Approximately 2 million people are involved in artisanal mining, and of those 2 million people, it is estimated that around 30 to 40% of those are women. So the main aim of this paper was to investigate how the gendered relations in terms of division of labor, in terms of access to resources, have impacted on women's ability to navigate their way in this very risky and insecure form of industry. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which resulted in some quarantines and lockdowns being implemented as some mitigatory measures, we find that women have mostly been negatively affected because initially when the pandemic broke out, that was around 20 March when the first case was reported, artisanal mining, unlike large-scale mining, was characterized as non-essential. And that meant that no activities were allowed by the state. So what it meant was that those who continued to be involved in the trade would do so during the night. And by nature, women could not partake in that. and mostly men would be able to do that. And that actually compromised women's ability to engage and to meaningfully benefit from artisanal mining. And this is against the backdrop of women being at the lower end of the mineral supply chain in terms of, artisanal mining, mostly in terms of their incomes. They are chronically underpaid because they are involved in the less riskier, activities and tasks and some ancillary activities which support the mining activities. So COVID-19 is now even compounded on those already existing challenges that women were facing. So this paper is trying to argue that the government, in order to cushion all those involved in the informal mining, and especially women, there is need to come up with gender-sensitive responses to women, especially, so that there is some gender equality and there is women empowerment, which enables women to be able to engage sustainably in this trade. And this is also, against the backdrop of Zimbabwe being a highly informalized economy, where, according to statistics, around 90% of the population is regarded as unemployed, and most of them have found, artisanal mining as their lifeline or, safety valve. So I will go on to give a summary of the findings. I'm still working on the full paper. And as I've said before, 30% of the artisanal miners, according to recent World Bank statistics, are women, which shows that women are a significant population in terms of participation in artisanal mining. And as I have also alluded to, women have already been at the lower end of the supply chain. And this has also been now compounded by the pandemic, which resulted in most women scaling down their activities, returning back home and attending to their gender roles. As Zimbabwe is a patriarchal society, and women are supposed to be at home looking after the family. So in terms of their participation and involvement in artisanal mining, they've been negatively affected in a big way. Also, COVID-19 came with some negative effects in terms of the gold pricing. There were some fluctuations, and because of the lesser bargaining power of women as compared to their male counterparts, they ended up selling their gold at very low prices, those that were fixed by the Zimbabwe Fidelity printers, which is the sole buyer of gold in Zimbabwe. Again, as another impact of COVID-19, we see the increase of sexual, structural, and gender-based violence of women when they returned home, and because of the frustrations that are there during the lockdowns, they become victims of gender-based violence. And because the economy or the whole country was under a shutdown, that meant that they had virtually no access to some justice systems that would even protect them. So I conclude by saying that there's need to promote gender equality and inclusivity in artisanal mining so as to achieve sustainable socioeconomic transformation in line with the country's national development strategy, which is the blueprint that has been designed to map the country's development from 2021 to 2025, and also in line with the broad national international development strategies, the Agenda 2030 and 2063. I thank you.
work-life balance of the female healthcare professionals in the private hospitals of Vadodara. This is a cross-sectional study. Their introduction in this competitive world, it is very essential for every healthcare sectors to create a competitive atmosphere that can help the employees to balance their personal and professional needs. Same with the growth of the education has improved the job prospects for women and reduced in the move from staples at home mothers to thriving professional women. Same way, in now scenario, the work-life balance refers to the difference between the workplace demand and the demands of health professionals. Right? Benefit from this study, we can attract new employees, helps the retail staff, builds diversity in skills and personals, even reduce sickness and absenteeism, enhancing work relationship between colleagues, increase level of productions and satisfaction and many more. Keywords for the literature review I've used is work-life balance, healthcare, working women's life, family life, and dependence. The journals, research paper, and article, research grade from where I get the paper, the literature review, and the volumes use is and in all. The few I have reviewed many papers like 20, but among from 33 only get represented here, where they are saying that they will have significant different level of work-life balance according to the dependent. The same way in the under, as per Mariam Malik, it is materials is undergoing massive imbalance in the work-life balance and the life balance. So we can say that it is studies is also found that there is a significant relationship is there between the work-life balance and the family size. Time limit timeline gap which I found is latest study done in 2015. After 2015, I have not found on the specific in India on Gujarat state. After 2015, there is no paper I found. So there's a time gap, and yes, area-wise, we can say in healthcare sector, especially for females, nurses and doctors, they have studies very few, and research gap is the vast amount of research has focused on this general topic of work-life balance, including work-life conflicts and work-life balance practices. However, very limited research has been found directed toward the personal environment and the work environment of a women employee of healthcare sector. And the content gap is the few studies on nursing, but combined study on among working women of healthcare sectors not done. So here I have, as a sample, I have chosen the doctors and female doctors and nurses as my samples. My aim of the study is to assess the factor affecting the work-life balance of the female healthcare professionals working in hospitals, Vadodara, that is in Gujarat. Objective to determine the factors affecting the work-life balance among the working women in healthcare sector. The place of the study is Vadodara. The sample size I have taken is 335. It's collected through the primary mode of data collection using questionnaire, close-ended questionnaire. Data collection is those who are responded who have willingly wanted to participate in the study are included. Mostly they are professional healthcare workers, that is doctors and nurses only. The sample description, the whole population, which includes all the day and night shift of women working in healthcare sector. Same way, exclusion criteria is those who are not willing, and the materials which are being used in the studies are the structure questionnaire containing items in local languages pertaining to social demographic and work-life balance. Sufficient copies of questionnaires in local languages performer will be used. The data collected from the female nurses and doctors working in private hospitals of Vadodara was tabulated in and coded in MS Excel. The data was then analyzed using the SPSS version 23. The statistics stats used was Critical Values and Man-Victory test, that is 95% comprehension. The result which I have found is that there are 87 female doctors and 248 nurses in the study. Among the 335 respondents, 51 female healthcare professionals had no dependent, while 135 had one independent, and 107 had two independents, and 41 had more than two independents with them. The study shows that there was a statistically significant difference between the work-life balance between the female doctors and nurses. The respondents who are having more dependents are satisfied with all the household works and very punctual to office and everything. But those who are very less dependent and there's no one to help them, they are finding little bit problems in facing the work-life balance. But as compared to the married and female unmarried females, here the female who are married have more satisfied than the female who are not married, that's single. So we can say the work-life balance was statistically different, significantly different among the healthcare professionals according to the respective numbers of the dependents. And the conclusion of my study is there is a big challenge for the work-life balance. Working women to make a balance between the professional life and the personal life. Working women are playing double role in their life, but up to what extent they are able to handle and manage their double responsibility becomes more important. The work-life balance important human resource area of concern for the employees. Hence, the study highlights an important issues to address the better satisfaction and content of the female healthcare professionals. And yes, the health industry, especially the hospitals, have suffered abundantly during the COVID-19 pandemic, and hence the study highlights some impact issues to be addressed for the better satisfaction and content of the female healthcare profession. These are my references. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And really, you have given your
topic, organizational culture in public and non-public higher education institutions in Poland. And here you have our research team and my agenda: short introduction, organizational culture, a literature review, material and method, findings and discussion, and finally a summary. So Polish higher education has undergone significant changes in the last 30 years, and the changes are primarily related to the political transformation indicated in 1989. So the most important changes include the creation and dynamic development of fee-paying non-public universities. So public universities have also begun to offer part-time and weekend study courses for which there is a tuition fee. And due to the growing threat from alternative educational institutions, public universities must increasingly turn to solutions applied on the ground of business, and this is called the new public management theory. So while research on various hard aspects, such as the economic efficiency or development strategies, has already been conducted, not many attempts have yet been made to examine such an important soft element as the differences in the organizational cultures of public universities. So the main aim or purpose of the study was to analyze the organizational culture both at public and non-public universities in Poland based on Cameron and Quinn's model. So in the literature on the subject, we can find plenty of different definitions of an organizational culture. For example, Shane said this is a pattern of shared basic assumptions that the group learn as it solves its problems of external adaptation and internal integration that has worked well enough to be considered valid and therefore to be taught to new members as the correct way you perceive things or even feel in relation to those problems. So the research conducted so far has focused on identifying the elements or levels of organizational culture. So what makes up organizational culture and on the classification. So on the basis of which criteria can organizational cultures be divided. So we have four most popular concepts related to organizational culture. First, for example, culture as an iceberg. This is Shane's model. Culture as an onion, Hofstede's model. So these two concepts try to give answers for this question: what makes up organizational culture? The second two, on the basis of which criteria can organizational cultures be divided. So here we have Henley's model of organizational culture and Cameron and Queen's model of organizational culture. Because we conducted our research based on Cameron's and Queen's model, I want to show you their classification. So we have four different types of an organizational culture. So we have clan, we have autocracy, we have hierarchy, and we have market. And the clan culture, so leader type, facilitator, mentor, team builder, value drivers, commitment, communication, development, theory of effectiveness, human development, and participation produce effectiveness, and quality strategies, empowerment, team building, employee involvement, human resource development, or open communication. Organization is seen as a huge family. The second one, the hierarchy culture, leader type, coordinator, monitor, or organizer. Organization puts attention into some values like efficiency, punctuality, consistency, and uniformity. Theory for effectiveness, control and efficiency with appropriate processes produce effectiveness, and quality strategies, error detection, measurement, process control, systematic problem solving, quality tools. So organizations should operate like machines. The market culture, leader type, hard driver, competitor, or producer, value drivers, market share, goal achievement, and profitability. So generally, organizations with this organizational culture try to be the best in the market. Theory of effectiveness, aggressive competition, and customer focus produce effectiveness, and quality strategies measure customer preferences, improve productivity, create external partnerships, enhance competitiveness, involve customers and suppliers. And finally, the autocracy culture, leader type, innovator, entrepreneur, visionary. So these organizations try to develop new things. That's why we have agility, theory for effectiveness, innovativeness, vision, and new resources produce effectiveness, and quality strategies surprise and delight, create new standards, anticipate needs, continuous improvement, and so on. And our research sample includes 8 universities operating in Poland, 4 public and 4 non-public, and in total 186 respondents filled in the questionnaire. Of this number, 113 were women and 74 men. In terms of age structure, the majority of respondents were between 41 and 50 years old. In terms of academic positions, 84 respondents were professor extraordinarius. So the organizational culture assessment instrument developed by Cameron and Queen was chosen as a research tool for this study, as it has been successfully used in examining organizational culture in many branches, not only in higher education institutions. For example, logistics or local governments. And the participants were asked to distribute 100 points over 4 alternatives that correspond to the 4 culture types. So they judge 6 dimensions of the university. So first of all, dominant characteristics, organizational leadership, management of employees, organizational groups, strategic emphasizes, and criteria of success. And they were supposed to assign a higher number of points to the alternative that is most typical of the organization. Public universities are focused on internal support, stability, and control. And that is why we have hierarchy culture. And non-public universities are focused on goals, targets, and competition. That is why we have market culture. And we try to assess all these 6 dimensions. And what is important, at public universities, generally, we have hierarchy culture, average number of points in a cross section of 6 dimensions, 37.88. At non-public universities, at the top, we have market culture, average number of points in a cross section of 6 dimensions, 27.62. At public universities, in the end, we have adhocracy culture. Also, at non-public universities, this culture took the last place. And a short summary. So the higher education sector in Poland has undergone a number of significant changes since the political transformation from a centrally planned economy to a market one. So there is a significant difference in cultural profiles between public and non-public universities, of course, included in the study, because like I said, we included only 8 universities. On average, public universities in Poland are older, larger, and more prestigious, both in terms of the number of students and employees, which total more than non-public universities. So they also have more stable financial foundations. So the hierarchy culture based on adherence to exact rules, procedures, or directives prevails for public universities as number 1. On average, non-public universities in Poland are more dynamic and flexible than public, so their existence depends on acquiring funds on their own. 4 non-public universities included in the study have a market culture, with hierarchy culture also following closely. And of course, we should remember about some research limitations. First of all, the lack of research on a larger research sample that would cover a larger number of education institutions, of course, both public and non-public, and future research directions. We will try to continue our research. So an interesting area would be to look at the differences between the current and the preferred culture and include the opinions of other groups of stakeholders. So not only employees, but also students and administrative staff. Thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you very much. And it was a very nice presentation. And you have focused all things very well. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And proceeding book after 15th November 2021. An online publication tentative date is 10th November 2021. We are very grateful for your presence with your given time and efforts. Our well wishes for the future collaborations and participation. Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you.
Hello? The world The first paper presented by Manoj, turnover intention of professionals and its determinants factors. He explained very well and also identified the reasons for turnover initiation taken by the individuals. She said that motivating the people not to move from the organization to organizations. As long as you can positively motivating the employees, the people cannot move from one to one organizations. And again, while that is turnover takes place, most of the case in women employees are more turnover when compared to the men. Because of the reason what he said is gender is identified as female employees. Before marriage, they are working in one place, and after marriage in the other place. Likewise, they are verifying gender role, the impact on turnover, demographic variables, climate, and all these things are influencing the turnover initiation by the employees in the organizations. The second paper, Jitendra Kumar Dubey, he studied GST and also demonetization on the growth of, that is, MSMEs. Of course, he explained very, very well. Both these things are defined. And he answered the questions raised by both the panel members as well as chairman also. Yes, ultimately identified some lapses are identified while implementing the GST from the part of the government side. And again, not only GST, because of GST, many small and medium enterprises were closed because of this GST, the impact is identified. One more thing is that is demonetization also severely affected the small and medium enterprises, as he explained by Dubey. The third paper is Syed Sahana. She explained socio-economic impact of COVID-19 on the society. She also explained so many impacts on the society at large, as the social functions was not identified, the closure of the educational institutions, loss of employment, that is cancellation of seminars, workshops, the organizing the faculty development programs, all are closed. And also, she said, in the COVID-19 situation, the most of the affected parties are migrant workers, then the workers in the industry, the manufacturing sector are more affected. All these things are concluded by this Dr. Syed Sahana. The fourth paper, Shipi Verma, said that resource degradation through human capital accumulation. Of course, she explained many areas where that is accumulation of capital resources through forest resource exploitation, fishing, overgrazing, agriculture, and also land regression. All these things are identified as reasons for this capital accumulation in the world identified. She also presented with the help of theoretical model, the human capital intensity technology, national resources intensity technology, natural resources technology. All these things explained by Shipi Verma is identified. And the fifth one is, that is Eminence Nagase, the gender analysis, the impact of COVID-19 is also explained. And she explained more of then. He explained that is more affected parties are women. And his explanation happened over using that in the case of Zimbabwe, he explained, but women compared to men, more influenced or more affected, more impacted by the COVID-19 because of sexual harassments in mining industry and also the harassment from the that is managers and other superiors also identified. Another one is Khan and Sabama Praveen. A study to access the work. She explained in brief how to attract the new employees. She collected the data from 335. The participants or representatives are participants participated in her study. A cross-sectional study is conducted, and the change. She explained the challenge is more and more about the women when compared to the men when balance of work life in their organizations. And the last and final one from Poland, that is, I don't know what the title is, organized culture at public and non-public universities higher education system in Poland. He explained the model setting that that is a clan culture, hierarchy culture, market culture, identity culture, and also he took the sample size of 8 universities and also collected from data from 187 participants. Out of 100 points, he explained that is 6 points are more dominating factors as per his observation and recon. All these things are identifying as presentations from all these papers presented in the technical session 1. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. I am extremely thankful to our HOD in social Science department and the coordinator Mary Rajan Garu and university at large. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
So I would like to thank Dr. Pietre, Dr. Rashmi Gujarati, Dr. B.K. Suryaprakash Rao, and Dr. Conrad for being with us in this session as the session chairperson. So let's, sir, if you have any, have you read that chat message, Dr. B.K. Suryaprakash Rao?
Yes, yes, yes. I will send it within no time. Yes.
Yeah.
I will send.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, okay, sir. మీకు దేంట్లో దీంట్లో పెట్టి ఉంటారా ఎస్ఎస్ఆర్లో లేకపోతే
yeah, you can take him. Wait.
So all dear participants, we will continue our next paper presentation session just after 5-minute time. So we are ending this meeting.
Next 5 minutes. Yes, I can start.
You can join
Next
again
5 minutes.
after 5 minutes, exactly 5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Take care.
Okay, it's all right. Are you going to use mobile or mobile from this side?
no.